You know, what's the old saying? Nothing's inevitable except death and taxes. Well, one I'd kind of like to avoid, but I kind of think I'm not going to. And the other one, taxation, I just wrote out a lovely check to the government for a whole lot more money than I want to write out to. Nevertheless, that's my free gift to the government. It's something I agreed to. Uh, did I agree to it? Um, Another way that the Anglo-American system works, or another way that the system works under any country that's influenced by Britain, taxes are voted for by your representatives. Um, since the representatives represent us, we are the ones who give give the government money, and we agree to do it voluntarily. So where did this idea come from? Now, remember, I said that in the introduction to Magna Carta, that Magna Carta was a conservative document. And what did that mean? Well, it means that you know, essentially what the people who voted against King John were doing was they were saying, this is what we believe is the right way to do things. You know, they weren't trying to do anything new. They weren't trying to do anything unusual. They were just trying to get things right, get it in writing, and say this is maybe the first true constitution in the British language. And they just want to set down a procedure by which all the things that they believed are right would occur. And so, anyway, let's take a look at the articles in Magna Carta. There's two of them that bear directly on the subject of taxation. The first of these is Article 12. Now, I have it labeled here the need for common counsel. What Article 12 says is neither scutage nor aid shall be imposed on our kingdom unless by common counsel of our kingdom. Well, what the heck does that mean? Scutage was the money that knights paid and other people paid to get out of guarding castles. I mean, it was their duty to guard castles, and if they didn't want to do it, they could pay the king a certain fee and you get out of guard duty. Well, the king had turned this into taxation. Richard and John had said, "Okay, you don't need to guard this castle, therefore you have to pay me." And so it was a tax. The same thing goes with an aid. An aid is a one-time tax to for the kingdom through the king, where the certain amount of money was taken out of the Kingdom of England, oftentimes like 1/8 of the value of movable goods or something like that. And it was for one time deal. And so essentially, obviously, John was not consulting, and certainly Richard would not have consulted with the leaders of the kingdom as to whether or not an aid was necessary. And apparently, Richard and John were just taking aids out of people for whatever they wanted to. And so now they say that these two taxes are just limited. That you can ask for an aid, that's a one time gift for ransoming our person, that is for ransoming the king, which, by the way, Richard had to be ransomed out of Germany for making an eldest son a knight and for once marrying an eldest daughter. And they say, and that for these there shall not be levied more than a reasonable aid. So, pretty clear taxes are going to be constrained in some way. But how do you go about constraining taxes? How do you go about how do you go about obtaining this common counsel of the most powerful members of the kingdom? Article 14 details, and for obtaining the common counsel of the kingdom and the assessing of an aid, except in the three cases aforesaid, or of a scutage, we will cause to be summoned the archbishops, bishops, abbots, earls, and greater barons, severally by our letters. So, what does that mean? That means that the most powerful people in the kingdom, the king, or king's office, will write directly to these people and say, "We need your counsel. We want to talk to you. We're planning to ask for money to build a new port. We're planning to have a tax across the entire kingdom. We're planning to go to war, what have you. In this case, it happens through taxation. And so each person gets an individual letter. Each of these great figures in the kingdom gets an individual letter saying, come and talk to us. So that seems fairly simple. And of course, the great people of the kingdom are the ones who control the resources of the kingdom. But how about the merchants, the people who headed villages, the whatever, out in the boondocks? What about them? And the knights who ran John down said, we forced him to say, we will moreover cause to be summoned generally through our sheriffs and bailiffs, who are the representatives of the king, and others who hold of us in chief, that means who hold land directly from the king, for a fixed time, date, namely after the expiration of at least 40 days. So the king can't say, tomorrow we're going to have a common council. And gosh, everybody in the kingdom is invited. Can't do that. You have to give time enough for the news, the letter, whatever you're sending out, to get to the leaders of villages, to the people who are holding land directly from the king. You have to give them 40 days for the message to get there and for the person to get to wherever the meeting is going to be held, wherever the common council is going to be held. Just think of the advantage that a king could have if he simply said, well, we're holding a common council tomorrow. Well, only his buddies would know this. I'll send a letter to the entire kingdom. Kingdom without roads and without bridges and without any of the normal things that we in the modern world think would be there, can't do it. You couldn't even do this today. So as a result, you get 40 days. And oh, by the way, you also get some time to think things over. It's not like, gosh, I need an answer tomorrow. Instead, you get those 40 days to think things over, come to the king, come to wherever the king's holding his common council. And, everybody has an opportunity to get there and knowledge to know what it's about. So it's the barons say it has to be at a fixed place. So the king can't say, oh, we're going to have a common council in 40 days and not tell you where it's at. Because then again, only his buddies find out. And you can't say, well, we're going to have a common council in 40 days at Nottingham. And we're not going to tell you what it's about. Instead, what happens is these letters that go out to the great figures and to the leaders of, out in the boondocks, you'd have to tell them why you're coming. We're considering war with Scotland, and I want to talk to you about it. So now, so can the king say, okay, so in 40 days, we're going to meet at Nottingham, talk about war with Scotland, and then go, gosh, you're here now, and I don't want to talk about war with Scotland. I want to talk about taxation to build a new port. Can't do that. And when it says that when the summons has been made, once you send out those letters, the business shall proceed on the day appointed, and according to the council of those present, although not all who were summoned have come. So very clear. You're going to have a council. It's going to be on a fixed date, 40 days. It's going to be at a place where where you expect it to be. King's not going to be moving things around. And it's going to come according to the counsel of all those who are present, even if not everybody has come. So the king can't get around this by saying, we're going to have a common council and go through the whole thing, date, place, cause, and then tell his buddies not to show up. And then the king said, not everybody showed up, so I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway because I can't pull together a common council. Once you call a common council, you fill all these steps, you're going to have to come to a conclusion in the midst of the people who did show up. Even if they don't happen to like you, you still have to deal with them. So it may be that all your friends stay away and all your enemies come. That could happen. And the king doesn't get any chance of getting out of it just because his buddies didn't show up. And of course, so this means that his buddies will show up. His enemies will definitely show up. But his buddies are now going to show up too. And so you get a much better view of what the kingdom wants. So the process becomes a reliable process. You are going to, I mean, it's almost modern, and this is 1215. You get a summons, you're called into session, you got time to get the summons, you got time to travel to where you're supposed to. You're going to know exactly what you're doing. You're going to know what it's going to be about. It's going to proceed regardless of who shows up. I mean, I'm writing this. President Trump is in office. President Biden will soon be in office. And you know what? If their enemies are the only ones who show up in Congress, they still have to deal with Congress. They don't get choices on these things. You just can't pick and choose. So the king is going to get opinions or queen, that he or she may or may not want. But they're still going to get opinions. And they're going to be representative of the Kingdom of England. Now, is this representative democracy? No, I mean, people aren't voting, at least not yet. People aren't voting for, who's going to represent them at these Common Council. That's down the road. That's going to happen. It's not that far off. But it's just a way of saying that the kingdom as a whole is going to be represented, and a damn thing that the king or queen can do about it. They got to follow the steps, or it's not valid. What they do is not valid. And by gosh, in those days, if a king or a queen did something that wasn't valid, they might not live that much longer. In those days, they didn't impeach kings and queens; they executed them, and sometimes not very pleasantly. So, kings and queens were usually bright enough to figure out that violate this, and you got problems. You do get a Richard the Lionheart, who maybe is a bit of a sociopath, and who you really don't want to cross. But now it's in writing. And, the king representing the kingdom, king's now under law, because he's got to follow these rules, or else it doesn't count. Even Richard would have had a hard time getting around all of these provisions. It's clear that the people of England, whether they're great magnates, bishops, or the average Joe and Jane back on the 5 acres that they're farming, they wanted regularity. They wanted to have a regular process by which the money would be taken out of their pockets. And if you didn't give it to them, you were clearly in violation of the rules of the kingdom. You were a lawless king or a lawless queen, and bad things were going to happen to you. So anyway, so that's how we get to the idea that taxes should be done only through the people. It's a free gift of the people given through your representatives. It doesn't say that right there, but it's where we get the idea that taxation has to occur through regular means. It's now become an official, bureaucratic process, and it's one that everybody knows and everybody can rely on. So it's a start. And of course, in the long run, it's going to be revolutionary. And it's all because they put it in writing. Anyway, everybody out there needs to take care, stay healthy, stay safe. And, hopefully we'll all see each other someday in the future. So take care and good luck. Bye-bye.